So whenever I'm talking to you, just so you know, I'm always kind of listening to see what guidance I'm supposed to say. So with channeling, what you're doing is you're connecting to the benevolent realm. You can also channel the divine. You can channel your higher spirit. You are able to go into this place in your heart and go into that feeling space and then connect to the divine. And in that realm, what's happening is you're raising your vibrational frequency. And through that, what happens is you're able to decipher information that comes your way in the form of energy.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Genevieve, welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on. I'm excited.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. Before we get started, maybe you could share a little bit about, the work that you do, if you don't mind, briefly.
Well, to sum it up in a small, short form, is that I basically help people to awaken to their spirit in a summary format. That's the ultimate goal. And then they can learn how to connect to their spirit, learn how to hear its calling for you. Because we do have a calling, a purpose inside of ourselves. And discovering what that is can only be done when you connect with your spirit.
Yeah, thank you. And you do a lot of channeling. Could you define what that really is and how that looks like within yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast.
So whenever I'm talking to you, just so you know, I'm always kind of listening to see what guidance I'm supposed to say. So with channeling, what you're doing is you're connecting to the benevolent realm. You can also channel the divine. You can channel your higher spirit. You are able to go into this place in your heart and go into that feeling space and then connect to the divine. And in that realm, what's happening is you're raising your vibrational frequency. And through that, what happens is you're able to decipher information that comes your way in the form of energy. In the same way, like if you know like when someone comes into your room and you feel oh, they're feeling down, there's something wrong going on. You're tapping into a particular vibration, and you know what that vibration is equivalent to, a particular emotion. And so when I channel, that's what I'm doing. I'm tapping into these vibrations of energy, and I'm recognizing what each vibration means in terms of an emotion or a word, like a descriptive word.
Yeah, thank you. Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you feel, do you have any remembrance of like past lives and stuff for yourself?
I do have remembrance of past lives. So for me, it's not like believing in it. I know it exists. And so yeah, I've had past lives. I've had past lives of, actually I was shown when I say shown, I mean, no one told me, I saw it. I had visuals of it, of being indigenous actually, in the Four Corners area. I saw 2 past lives there as an indigenous person, a male and a female. And then I saw myself as a male indigenous in Canada, in the West area. And for some reason, I don't know why I was shown those lives, but I was. those particular ones. And I was shown myself in Norway as a fisherman, and I had 5 kids, and my wife died giving birth to the 5th kid, and I was like this wonderful husband, and I just adored her, and I adored the kids, and so I had to nonstop fish to feed the family. And in this life, I cannot even go near fish.
That's that's funny. I love how you said I don't believe in reincarnation. I know, because that's how I feel. Ever since I was a kid, I had like little glimpses of remembrance, like seeing like Indiana Jones, even though like that whatever they were trying to portray, that background, like I knew I lived in an environment like that before, or those old Chinese movies, kung fu movies, and ancient China in the late 80s on regular TV. Like I had this inner knowing, or even watching Star Wars or Star Trek. Like I felt like I've been there before. There's like this inner knowing. Now I didn't have all these details and stuff. I just had this inner knowing. So
Mm-hmm.
I love how you said that. What role do life lessons in soul evolution play in the process of reincarnation? And how do we recognize like patterns from past lives? I don't know if you believe in like past life trauma and stuff in our current life, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the first one, um,
Sorry.
yeah, I'm trying to remember the
Sorry.
first one. The first one is what roles.
In our soul evolution, these life lessons that we have play a part in reincarnation.
Okay, so what I'm being shown here right now is this answer is not coming from me; it's coming through me. Is that it's not what we think it is. We're not coming into a life to ascend from the previous life. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that we are coming here to uh, express our desires. And what happens is, depending on where we live, depending on what planet, what planet we live on, what country we live in, at the time that we are there, there's a collective consciousness. There's a collective frequency that's going on. And so the the the, the body that we're in that time will have a certain connection to this collective consciousness and will be guided by this. So if we're in the dark ages, as an example, then our behaviors, everything that we're doing is based on that time frame. We're going to be living that time frame, and we're experiencing an expression of our desires through connecting with our spirit's desires and living that through. So the purpose isn't to continually ascend. The purpose is to be the ascension, no matter what lifetime you're experiencing, because when we're in um, when we're in energy form, when we're no longer with our bodies, we just are. We are love. We are consciousness. And when we're in form, we can create in ways unimaginable. So the idea, that concept that people have of karma and reincarnating and overcoming this and so forth is not exactly the way um, it is. Because if you think about it, everything is in the now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate that. I heard you talk about you had a now experience, and I've had some not as profound as yours, but I had a pretty cool experience with the now. But would you mind touching on that if you don't mind?
sure. I've had many now experiences. So I'm going to think about which one you're thinking of. But I
Everything
had an
is the now.
experience. Actually, it's interesting because you mentioned in a podcast how Paramahansa came to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so somehow I feel like we are kindred spirits because Paramahansa was the first one that I learned
Wow.
about, connected with. And when I was 18, I went into my sleep, and then a yoga guy, a guru guy, came and said, "Now it is time. Come." And we walked into another room. We sat in meditation, and then I went out of my body and became one with the light and experienced the power of this divinity. I experienced it in the same way that people talk about when they near-death experiences. So I became all light. I heard the vibration. There was like that wow 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 heartbeat kind of sound, and it it was an intense amount of love, intense, and the love was beaming at me, even though I was the light. I wasn't a form anymore. I could hear the molecules all moving about, and this light beam was shining in through me, and yet I was a part of it. But I knew that I could experience that there's a source. And I had tears coming down because I couldn't believe that that kind of love exists, that the kind of love that we have for each other as humans is not nearly close to that experience. And the other interesting thing is that the moment I thought of a question, the answer automatically came. And for some reason, it wasn't the Genevieve asking, like the person that lives here on earth. It was my higher self. It was, or my soul, asking, because the types of questions that I was asking was actually scientific, and um, uh, talking about creation, and I was given such detailed scientific answers that I couldn't take back here because I wouldn't comprehend what that even means. But in that moment, it all made sense. So I never forget that experience. It wasn't a dream. It was real.
And they say we astro travel when we're sleeping as well, right?
Some people are aware of that, but I'm not.
When I was a kid, I was, but that doesn't happen for me anymore. And I don't remember dreams anymore for some weird reason. But you just gave me something that I can share. And I've shared this before on here, but when I was in Ohio, I was working. I'm a finished carpenter and working on a brand new house. I'm in the woods. There's no restroom. Had to go number one, and so I went into the field and I looked at. As I'm peeing, I'm looking into this flower that's almost the same height as me. It's like it was a flower that from a plant, and I'm looking into this flower, and all of a sudden, I had this outer body experience where I was not identified with the mind or the body. And and when I would describe this, I remember seeing like the environment, like in the woods and stuff, looking like remember the Predator, where he's like cloaking. But when you talked about vibration, and I realized now as you were speaking that everything was on such a high vibration.
Mm-hmm.
It looked blurry, and the reason why it looked blurry because it was moving out of form or the physical. That's what just came to me right now. I mean, I gotta think about that now, but maybe that's exactly why I seen everything looking more like the Predator, where it's like blurry, but I felt like I was pure state of consciousness. I was beyond the mind, the body, and the senses, and I was in a state of oneness. And there was no, there was just, hell, it was weird. There's no conditioned mind. It was just all like, I. It's hard to explain, but yeah, and I kept going in and out of this for a couple days.
Wow.
You just made me think about that when you said that. Yeah, and I love Yogananda too. He's helped me out so much, and I didn't know who this dude was. This guru, never heard of him. I don't know if you know. I spent a lot of time at Lake Shrine in the Pacific Palisades in California, and I ended up getting sober, and I would take guys to do what we call a third step prayer, and I'll take them to Yogananda's lake shrine and with the balloon, and they'll write their own prayer about turning their will and their life over to the care of God of their own understanding. Right, that's step 3 basically. And they would put it on a balloon, their personal prayer. I wouldn't even read it, and I'll leave them alone. They'll say their prayer, and then they'll let go of the balloon, and I go, "There goes your will," you know, you know. And that was just part of the step. But I would do it at Lake Shrine because of the unity, and it was beautiful. It would show like the statue of Jesus with the river. It will show the Buddha up in the mountains with the rock of river, anonymously taking souls to the lake, and Krishna would be over there, and there would be another river, and they're all bringing souls back to the big lake, the ocean of spirit. It's right by the ocean, and just bringing all those waves back to the ocean when it hits the shore. That's how I look at it. And there's no such thing as death, and that's what I like about Kuan Yin and the Bhagavad Gita and stuff. They all talk about how there is no death. Who we really are doesn't die. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so many experiences with Yogananda, but I was gonna ask you about maybe you could walk us into your upbringing a little bit and your early life. Did you come in like awakened or just into spirituality, or how did it look like for you and your background?
So when I was, I just remember this when I was 4. I was in the living room and I was alone, and I don't know what my family was doing. I think my dad was working and my brothers were out at school. And I remember I was just feeling such a state of peace. I went to the record player, and my parents, they were kind of like hippies, and they had the music of the 60s, and I think I took a record and I put it on the record player and started playing it, and it was some kind of spiritual music. I don't know, it wasn't the Beatles, but I can't remember who was. It might have been, but I don't know. It could have been one of the Beatles songs where they are doing that spiritual song. And I just felt content. I didn't feel bored or anything like that. I didn't have a need to be with other people. I just felt it was kind of like that feeling like I know who I am kind of feeling. And my parents were, uh, they came from Germany, and my dad was like reading about the Ram Dass and like the different things he was reading, and he was fascinated by all of it, and he wanted to know more and more and more. And then there was a guy, his name was Premwat, where they had learned uh, about meditation. He actually lives in the States, and he came from India. And he's been to the UN talking about peace. He goes to prisons teaching them about peace, and really making a difference actually in teaching them about meditation. So um, he's been quite helpful to humanity. And so my parents learned this meditation. So they always said to me, "Go within. The answers are within." That's all they would say. Just go within. Go within. Breathe. Go within. And so they never talked about angels and ascended masters and stuff like that, because that didn't matter to them. What mattered the most is that you connect to the divine within. And so that's how I grew up, with this kind of way of thinking in my life. And it wasn't until I was, I don't know, 15 or 16, where Mother Mary came to me. And I wasn't brought up with religion. I didn't know anything about these beings, but for some reason I just knew it was her.
It's awesome. I love the Gnostic text as well. Like I think I was a Gnostic in the past life, and I was gonna share something, but I didn't pull it out. But it's called the Thunder Mind, and it's about they're acknowledging the female aspects, of the divine. the goddesses, and maybe I'll show you that later. But they founded in 1945 with the Nag Hammadi Library, the other text with the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Philip, and all these other gospels. But they're acknowledging the divine feminine, and it's so beautiful that section of it was either a mantra or some sort of prayer, but it's the acknowledging Isis, acknowledging the Greek goddesses and Mary and so on. So it was just really a beautiful prayer acknowledging the goddesses. And I know you have a book about awakening to the goddess within. How do I awaken to the goddess within, by the way? No, I'm just like.
Actually, it's meant for men too. It's funny because when I started to write it, Mary Magdalene came to me, and she said that the title of the book is "Heal and Awaken the Goddess Within," and you cannot change the title. If you learn about e-commerce and Amazon and all that, when you pick a title, you're supposed to pick a title that people search for, and you learn all these keyword stuff, and that they're going to have none of that. The title had to be the title. And it was funny because I didn't even realize what I was about to write. Yeah, I just knew that it's going to change lives somehow. And so the concept, I had to learn along the way as I went through myself. I had to learn the teachings. So the concept is that humanity has been very action oriented, goal oriented, do, and that's working on the divine masculine energy, where male and female have all been just going, and it's time to restore ourselves to the divine creator, and the divine creator is the divine feminine. And in order to do that, one must let go of the need to always be action oriented and feeling like if they have to do something, then they're showing success. The success is when you can slow down and receive. When you receive, you're acting in the divine feminine energy. Receive the wisdom that comes through you, rather than using the words they use is the limited mind. The limited mind is so archaic and doesn't know much. And in order to connect to the divine mind, you need to be in receiving mode. And to be that's restoring yourself back to the divine feminine energy. And so what happens with that is you awaken your intuition, you get more heart-centered, you start to trust again in the divine will, the divine intelligence showing you the way. And sometimes when you get shown that way, it can be scary, but you learn to surrender. And so again, that's another divine feminine aspect. Learn to surrender. And like when you think about it, even with sex, how many people are afraid to surrender? Male and female, they're so afraid to surrender. And so when you learn to, not everyone, obviously, but I'm just saying as an example, but when you learn to, but even when you think, this is what they're telling me, even when you think you are surrendering, they're saying you could surrender even more. That the surrendering is infinite. That concept for us could be kind of hard to understand. But when we surrender even a little bit more the next day, and a little bit more, then we're going to actually discover more knowledge, receive more knowledge. And so that's ultimately the goal, is surrendering to the divine will and to understanding that the divine knows how to show you towards a path that you feel compelled to go towards. Whereas your limited mind will be thinking, oh, I have to do it this way. and I can't do it until these situations. And that's the doer thinking that you know better.
Well, how would you define surrender and divine will or God's will?
Okay. So there's an intelligence. They know that in quantum mechanics, that the energy has intelligence. And when you can realize that this so-called God is not some being up in the sky, it's an energy that has an intelligence, and it also it's made up of love and power. We know that from electricity, as an example, lightning, like things can go on fire. It's got power. So this intelligence has the answers to everything. It has the answers to how you can live a better life, what next steps you should take that can lead you to this end result, what to watch out for. Don't do this today because something drastic could happen. It knows. It knows that if you go down a certain pathway, you're going to lead to this end result. You don't know that, but it knows. And so divine will is not what people think it is. It's not some man made up of God who is telling us how to live life, and that we have no control over it, and our life will live that way. What divine will is that when you realize that this energy is all encompassing, that you're not separated from this energy. There's no, it's over there and I'm over here. It's all oneness. So when you know that it's all oneness, now you know that you are also this energy. And this means you have these qualities, and that you can tap into this divine intelligence. And the idea of creation is, in the beginning was the Word. The Word is your thought. So when you think, and God thought and the world was created, and you are that. When you think, I know, the intelligence knows how I can, in your particular case, how I can have 500,000 followers. The divine intelligence knows. And the divine intelligence, the heart part of the divine is showing me that I'm supposed to, first of all, as an example. Not not an egoic thing. I got to have 500,000. The first thing is if you sense in your heart that you're supposed to grow your community because the divine is showing you that, your higher self is showing you that, then you say, well, I don't know how to do it. But what you do instead is you say, I don't need to know, because I'm aligned with this divine intelligence. All I need to do is use the commanding energy. And the commanding energy is not asking, it's not begging. The commanding energy is, okay, so you feel like I should be going in this direction. I sense that that's correct. I don't know how to do it, but I know that this intelligence knows. And so I know it's going to happen. I don't know how, but I know it's going to happen. And I know I'm going to be shown the steps. And that is divine will. So now you are aligning with the intelligence that the divine knows. And so in that, you are making miracles happen. And next thing you know, some famous guy reaches out to you, says, hey, boo-boo, I just love your show and I want to help you reach to this point in a short period of time. And I think that you should be on stage here and da-da-da-da. I think your message is amazing. That's only because you aligned with that knowing. So that is the divine will. If we can relate to divine will as that we are actually part of divine will. And when we can align with the knowing that it is always flowing through us, what also happens is uh, your meridians start opening up more, your chakras open up more, there's a flow of energy that's coming through even stronger. So your vibration raises the moment you say, I know. And it's powerful, because then you start to be more awake to this energy. You start to become more sensitive to it and experience it, and it can become blissful over time.
Thank you. There's so much you said that I can relate to, and I'm having a conversation as you're talking with some of the key things you were saying, because I was supposed to do this at least 3 years ago, put a podcast together, but I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. All that good stuff or it's not good stuff, but all that stuff that goes on in that inner critic. I was listening to it, but deep down inside, I knew I had to put a podcast together. There's an inner knowing, but this was a little bit louder, even though I could still feel this. This is winning. And then finally, I started to, I just did it. I just did it, and and here I am. But I really appreciate you saying that. And another thing that came to mind, you talked about not being a guy with the beard in the sky, and you brought up the Beatles earlier, and I'm gonna paraphrase. I'm pulling it out of the files now from John Lennon. He said, and I haven't read that in a long time, but I'll say it the best. But he said something perfectly. He says, "I believe in God, but not as an old man in the sky. I believe what people call God is something that's within all of us. I believe Jesus, the Buddha, Muhammad, and all the rest were right. It's just the translation's gone wrong."
Yeah,
And I
that's
love that.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's within us. And um, an awakening. How would you define an awakening in your experience, in your understanding?
So when people are walking the world and have been brought up under social conditioning, thinking that if you go to school, you got to get good grades, you have to then go to college and university, and then you work for a corporation, and this is the way it has to be, and um, worrying about what other people say and so forth. This whole conditioning that happens results in people staying in the limited mind, placing their attention on the area of their brain. In the same way, like if I were to say to you, what's 5 plus 5 times 3 divided by 6? That attention, where you place your attention, is a certain part in your brain.
Hmm.
And that is, if people are doing that consistently, then they're not awake. They're not aware of this divinity that's flowing through them. They're not aware that there's a higher intelligence that could guide you in a much better way. And so being aware is when you you know this flow is always happening, and you experience the flow in whatever way that you experience it. Some people could experience it energetically. Some people just know it, see it, feel it. And when you are aware, then what happens is you become aware not only of that, but you become aware of your own limited thoughts, and you realize how limited they are, and you can decide to make choices to change them. Because the one thing I was shown not too long ago was that the greatest form of meditation is to change your thoughts. Because when you do, when you align with divine truth, then literally there's an energy flow that just comes flowing through us. I've become so sensitive that I've experienced that now. And the more truth you speak, it just becomes powerful and powerful. So it's imperative that when you want to experience God, that you change your thoughts and you decide. It's interesting because I helped a client mine not too long ago, and she had a really pretty amazing position in her career where she could impact tons of lives. And so I challenged her to shift all her thoughts that are not in alignment with divine truth. And so when you pay attention to each thought you have, would the divine be saying the same thing? And if the answer is no, then how can you shift that into divine truth? And the moment she started doing that, and I said, it'll just take 3 weeks, and where you change the pattern, and it's going to be automatic now, where you default to positive thoughts, whereas right now you're defaulting to negative thoughts, which pretty much so many people do. But you can retrain yourself and shift. But when that happens, the amazing thing happens is that crazy miracles happen. Just amazing miracles can happen. I can't get into specifics with this situation, but let's just say it was pretty miraculous, one after another after another.
I love that. I love what Marianne Williamson says. A miracle is a shift in perception from fear to love. And if you're in love, you're in trust, you're in flow, you're in harmony with the divine will. Like you're so perfectly saying. And, you brought something up for me. One time this is how I kind of see reality at times. For the most part, I could see people trapped in bubbles or boxes. And it's all the belief systems. You talked about changing your thoughts. And everyone talks about the matrix, but there's so many layers of it, within us, outside of it. But I could tell where people are trapped in by looking at their behavior and their beliefs. Um, we get caught up in our conditioned thinking, like the political arena, the religious part, our culture, or our spacesuits, and all that, or our traumas and everything fogs up our window of perception from God consciousness. And yeah, sometimes it was hard for me to experience this stuff, to see like loved ones like suffering, unnecessary suffering, and because of these beliefs. And and I think awareness is everything. Like you said, in meditation, when you go from being it to seeing it, enlightenment is possible. It happens once the unconscious becomes conscious, enlightenment occurs. And I can detach from those thoughts, and it loses its power. And even like some of the thoughts I have now that are conditioned, they go away if I'm actually applying principles and I'm trying to live a spiritual life or being more mindful. I can catch myself in action and diffuse it, and the more I do that, the less power it has over me. And I see reality through the screen of my thinking, right? So if I'm changing my thoughts and living more in harmony with love, then, what does Wayne Dyer say? A hostile person lives in a hostile world. A loving person lives in a loving world, same world. And that's how I was able to, change my thinking through that mindfulness or meditation. So I appreciate what you said.
Beautiful. Yeah. I understand what you're saying too, in terms of the pain that you can feel for others, knowing that they don't have to be thinking those things. I went through that myself.
Mm.
Yeah, it's not easy, because although the teachings that I went through when I was channeling my book were profound, my whole vibration shifted and I became even more aware. And then I started to see the world totally differently. And it did feel painful.
Yeah, I'm getting teary eyed now as I'm thinking about it, because like you can feel the suffering in people. It's like, damn, like I wish I could help them, and it's weird. It's like people don't understand. So I appreciate you talking about that, because like I could feel their emotions. Like you feel that one, that you're connected with everybody, and so like it's hard to have these experiences and not want to be helpful to the world. Sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off, but
Yeah.
I'm
No,
getting
with
teary eyed
perfect
with
timing.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's compassion at its highest level. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Um, it's not about reading the Bible and trying to memorize that stuff. It's experiencing it, right? And being pure in heart means all those labels are gone and you're more in tune to the oneness of life. And that includes the suffering of others. And you want to be more helpful, more loving. You can see God in them. Namaste, right? or the Maya would say in Lakish, you are I and I am you. It's acknowledging, understanding that oneness and feeling that unnecessary suffering. So I think it's kind of hard to have an awakening and not want to be the change for the world, want to be more helpful, more loving. Not in an egoic way, but just in a more compassionate way. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Sorry
exactly
about
that.
that. I never cry.
Oh, and you know, the other key thing too is when you have compassion for people and you realize they're still choosing to make their choices, then trying to see that, you know what, they're okay. They're going to be okay,
Yeah.
because regardless, they're not their body, they're not their limited mind, and they're going through a journey and experiencing whatever it is that they are meant to experience right now. And if they were awake, then then they would be choosing a different path. But they're choosing not to be even awake right now.
I totally agree. I think someone told me early on the world doesn't have to change for you to be okay. You do, and have acceptance and like everyone's on their own journey. Like I don't have to change people anymore. Like I used to want to change my mom, my father, my everyone else, but like they're exactly who they're supposed to be, and I get to love them for who they are and what they're going through. I don't have to be egoic and try to be the director trying to control everybody, but you can just appreciate them, and you be more life sensitive versus ego sensitive, and you're looking more through the lens of the heart versus the egoic, fogged up state of mind. If that makes
I,
sense, I don't
I
know.
think the hardest part for people is that in relationships, to
Mm.
not try to change them. I think that's the biggest lesson for people. If they can um, experience the glory of God through them and see them in that, see God in them, and try to hold back from pulling on the reins. Um, I've definitely learned a lot. I had to go through a lot of challenges in that, not always trying to give advice, not always trying to say, hey, you could be doing this instead. That would really help you if you did this.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Thomas Merton or Thich Nhat Hanh because they've talked about stop trying to make everyone fit our image, and allow people just to be. And that's what real love is. It's not conditioned love, but it's. I don't even like to use the word unconditional. It's just love. um,
Yeah.
it's just learning how, and that's hard sometimes. It really is, but yeah, I guess that's
I
why I have
read
these principles.
Thich Nhat Hanh's book in my 20s, Being Peace.
Mm, yeah.
And wow. Yeah, that's gets you in that state of just being peace.
Yeah, he wrote The Living Buddha, The Living Christ, and I was telling Marianne Williamson this a couple weeks ago. I says I don't think he realized that he was the Buddha, he was the living Christ. A lot of times in the West we hear about Christ consciousness, but in the East you hear about the Buddha. But I think it's all the same. They tapped into that universal consciousness or the mind of God. Whether people acknowledge God or not, they tapped into that higher source, and yeah, I think yeah. One thing I love to talk about reincarnation, that's why I brought it up, is because if we could understand reincarnation versus I just live this one life and I'm either going to heaven or hell, whatever belief system, it'll eliminate a lot of the ignorance, a lot of the racism, and judging people for their spacesuits or their behaviors. You could have a deeper sense of understanding that we are more one. We're all of, like in Christianity here, we're all God's children. Well, yeah, well, that means we're all related. We're all one family.
Yeah. And what they want, the Ascended Masters really want us to know, is that uh, being in a human form is heaven.
Mm.
Yeah, it is, because it's the time where we get to. So Saint Germain is speaking. He's like, it's time where we get to play in the sand,
Mm.
in the sandbox of life. It's where you get to be creative, where you can build castles, and create to your heart's desire. That's what he says. Create to your heart's desire is what you get to do as a human. And he says people have no realization, no full realization as to how glorious it is to be in human form. Yeah, because there's a yearning to be in a human form too, because it's, so the way he's saying it is, in the same way someone has desires to give birth, to make a baby, that's that innate desire to create. And so he says we have this innate desire to create just creations in itself, to create new ideas into manifestation, to bring new ideas into manifestation. And so that's we have this innate nature to create, to bring forth. So when we're in spirit form, we have this strong desire to be in human form so that we can create and manifest in this way. So he says it's not a punishment to be human, because many times I thought it's a punishment. It's, especially when you're in an awakened state, it's really can be quite miraculous. I don't know, I was listening to some show, I can't remember who said it, unfortunately. It might have been Matthias De Stefano, but basically I think it could have been him, is that we planets, when they first are born, the first forms that come on to the earth eventually are like the cave people. And they're not really like necessarily completely enlightened, and they have to learn things as they go along. And you have planets that are always evolving, and therefore people are always evolving on the planets. So depending on which planet you go to, one will be more evolved than the other. And eventually planets die. And then they start over again. And it's this cycle of moving from not knowing everything to discovering new things, and then new people are born, and then their parents teach you the next things, and so forth, and education changes and technology changes. And I mean, eventually there won't be any cars here anymore. It'll be totally different. This concept, well, let's not get down that road of cars, but
The
it'll be
Jetsons?
yeah, like the Jetsons. It'll be very different. We'll just like think and we transport.
Wow. You're a soul purpose coach, right?
Yeah.
What does that mean, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. There are many people who have that. They're starting to wake up to that inner buzz that I'm talking about. It's you're saying it in perfect timing. That inner buzz where there's like that desire to create. And that desire to create is, you came here, your spirit brought you here, your soul here, to create. And it has a specific desire. The desire is in alignment with a particular field. Some people just are drawn to music, or some people are drawn to building houses. There's a draw, and that draw is your purpose.
That's one of the questions I was going to ask you. I think in the your website it said 3 steps to awakening to your intuition. Yeah, and discover your purpose. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. How would you define purpose? I think you kind of answered it though. For the individual, and what's the purpose of life? You know.
The purpose of the individual is to be the expression of itself. And itself is always expanding and creating. So the purpose is to be the divine creator. We were created in the likeness and image of the divine, which means that we create. And so we came here to create. And the other question was,
It, well, I think it was for the collective. What's the purpose for the
The
for the
collective.
us as a collective?
Yes. Um,
Sorry, I'm still a little teary. I don't know why.
that's good. You know what? Often healing happens when I'm on calls with people and they get teary eyes and they're not really sure why, and they're just feeling this. There's often a flood of energy that's happening, and there's um, ascended masters, angels, and so forth surrounding you and working on you and doing healing.
Mm,
And people actually who've watched podcasts have received healing and have messaged me and said, "Oh my goodness, like Kuan Yin came and I had this amazing thing and I was down on my knees." And like, it was just amazing what people experience. So
mm,
the collective is their sole purpose. Again, this is just coming through me. It's not my mind. Their sole purpose is to love as a collective, to
mm.
love, to love in that frequency range that they're at. So if the collective, um, for instance, planet Earth right now, they're on the path of awakening to their spirituality. That's the collective energy right now, and to dismantle um, dismantle the old paradigm. That's the overhinging purpose of the earth, right? People here on this earth, and to always be in the resonance of love in that frequency range of awakening and dismantling. Now, on another planet, it may be to evolve technology, and they're aligning with the higher creative aspect where they're receiving downloads from the divine of these amazing creations that don't exist on the planet. And so collectively they're doing that, and collectively they're in the higher resonance of this love, but in that frequency range.
Thank you. I'm trying to think what podcast I heard you on where they asked you about a trans channeling, um, and you were like, "No, I'm a channeler," But the way that it's described, it seems like I don't. How do you feel about entity attachments where they can hijack your being for a period of time or whatever? When you channel, when people are new to channeling, should they do inner work? Should they work on themselves first so that way they don't have any? Because are there other evil or negative entities out there?
Yeah, there are lost souls. Let's just say that. They're lost
Mm,
souls. And well, like, let's just say when you are near someone who is a heavy drug user, they're completely lost. You can feel their energy. It's just like, it's not, it's a denser vibration. And it will take a lot for them to go up the ladder to reach a sense of healing, to go up to the ladder to experience a sense of understanding, and then going up the ladder to start to awaken. So it's a process. Now I forgot your original question. Oh, right,
entity.
the entities. So what I'm kind of explaining is frequency, and when you can sense, there's someone joyous coming into the room, and you're just like, whoa, I just want more of that. That's a frequency. And I do recommend that when people want to learn to channel, that they do first shift their vibration, shift the way they think, because that's very important. If they're thinking, so everything works on planes. Um, for instance, when you tap into people who have passed on, that plane is a much lower frequency than a plane of archangels, as an example. It's a much higher frequency. And what happens is when you tap into that frequency as a medium, as an example, the vibration is kind of a little more dense in comparison to this higher vibration. But it's much higher than your own here on Earth. And same with archangels, it's exponentially higher in frequency. And what happens is, in order to communicate with these beings, you must ascend yourself, ascend your vibration in order to even hear them. So what you're doing is you're going into their plane, their dimension. You're going into their dimension. And the only way to go into their dimension is through intention. And the only way through intention is to raise your vibration. And the only way to raise your vibration is through your heart. And when you go into your heart space and you align with the love that exists within you, and at the same time, when you get yourself centered in this love space, what happens is, in this space here is where you can connect to your spirit. So that's the most important thing to do first, is to connect to your spirit, to have a remembrance of who you are, and drop down from this mind into here. Because this mind will, if your attention is in this mind, what happens is your attention is on the frequency plane of the limited mind. And so therefore you go to, if you are having thoughts that are not completely true, then you align with a dimension where there are lost souls, and you will communicate with them. And you may think that they are a particular being, but they may not be a particular being. And so learning how to be in the meditative state in a way, you like not meditating, like I mean, I channel my book with my eyes open typing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in your walking meditation and everything that you do, you are in this state of the holy love that exists inside you. And when you have the holy love, you have the antennas open like this, just waiting to listen. And so your attention is up in the field of the soul star chakra, which is a foot above your head. Yet you're still heart-centered. You're still in the love. And so when you're like that, what happens is you raise your frequency exponentially. And you also should be grounded at the same time. So learning these techniques is important. Placing your attention a foot below your feet so that you are grounding at the same time when you're doing those things. And then you simply intend that you want to know an answer to something, and you receive. And what happens is you wait for a being to come to you, or just the divine to guide you. And you can be shown who is coming to you rather than you deciding who it is. So it's different. And this is how, that's the difference of going into the lost soul dimension and the benevolent ones that are just always connected to God.
How do these lost souls find their way back home? Do they eventually find their way back home?
So the one thing that I was shown here when I wrote my book is that the goal, the ultimate goal that they have in this book is to return them back to home. Because if they don't know where to go, they don't necessarily know how to go home because of their attention. Basically, the way you travel is through intention when you don't have a body anymore. I experienced that through intention. Actually, I experienced the different dimensions. So I experienced a dimension where I just saw people just waiting to come over onto back to Earth, but they didn't know that they could have gone home first. They could have experienced the divine. So they left their body and they went to this space where they're waiting to go back into a body. And that vibration was just a calm state of peace. But it wasn't anything beyond that. It just was just this peace. And I knew, okay, I don't want to be here. And through intention, I thought of the divine, and then immediately I went right into the light. But if you hadn't experienced it, then you don't know how to go home. It's the same what they're showing me right now. It's the same as if you've never gone to a particular restaurant, you don't know where it is until you drive there and you have the directions and you get there. So the next time you know how to go there because you remember.
Thank you. Is it possible to ask Kuan Yin a question? Is she around?
She probably can come around because she's been my common one that has been with me since forever, basically. So I will get into that state. Do you want me to get into a state, or do you want me to just answer?
If you can, yeah. Just one question.
Okay, what's the question? And then I can see if I can answer it quickly.
How do we help cultivate more compassion for ourselves and others in a world that's much needed, in my opinion?
Okay, so I'll just do it. I'll connect with her. Thank you for asking this question, lovely boo-boo. How can we cultivate compassion in this world?
Yes. How do we cultivate more compassion for ourselves and others in a world that seems very disconnected and a lot of suffering, unnecessary suffering?
By experiencing the knowledge that they are suffering. When you know something is suffering, then you automatically have pain inside of your own heart because you experience them. You experience what it is that they are going through. And this gives you such dear sadness. And sadness is compassion. Sadness is empathy. But when you can have compassion, you can also understand that they know not what they know. So they know not that they are not in this frame of mind, that they're not in the frame of mind of the divine. They do not know this. So how could they experience a shift in themselves if they do not even know that they are lost, that they are feeling these struggles and don't know how to get out? What they feel is like they're in a room with the door closed and the lock is engaged and they don't have the key to get out. And they don't know how to get out. And so they struggle inside of themselves and they don't even realize that they can unlock the door from the inside by just turning the doorknob. And so, how can you see compassion in others? By experiencing the glory of the divine through you, by realizing that this love is flowing through you and experiencing this love. And when you experience this love, it's impossible not to experience love for others. So you get out of the mind, you drop down into the heart, and you feel love. You spend each day, every day of all days, of every minute of every day, experiencing the love that flows through you. This is what you get to do as humanity, as a collective. A collective gets to turn their way inward and experience this great love that exists within and without. And when you can shift your focus away from the mind that is anchoring your hold so strong that you want to fight for your right and do everything that you think is right and tell people what's wrong and so forth, what you are doing is you are staying away from the sacred heart that exists within. When you can go into the sacred heart and instead experience this glory, and in that you shine your light to others, and in this shining, what happens is others then see this glory. They start to awaken, and in that they remember who they are. They experience the love that exists within them. For all they need is remembrance. They don't even need to be told. The remembrance happens when you are loving inside, that you share this love to others and they experience it plentyfold. See that? So that's an example. Like right now, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, so my third eye opened like crazy. My vibration raised, and like everything is like lightheaded and buzzing here now. That's when they come. It's like the chakra, everything opens up, and it's not like I go in up rising. It's like I go into another dimension, and that dimension is such a high frequency that my body is experiencing this high frequency, and I forgot to set the intention to have my attention below my feet as well.
Thank you for that. It's powerful. Maybe you can tell Saint Germain thank you, because what he said is what Thich Nhat Hanh says in his book, The Living Buddha, The Living Christ. He says, heaven must be found, and I'm paraphrasing him, heaven must be found in the here and the now. We got to be fully alive to enter the kingdom of heaven, not wait until we leave this body. So I appreciate that.
It's just, I heard something as you're saying that. The strong misnomer that religion teaches is that you go to heaven afterwards. What's happening is that everyone is waiting until they can go to heaven and not experiencing that here. They don't end up being in that state of love, loving people, loving them even when they are not nice to you, to love them back. And when they can experience that, that's when they realize heaven is here.
Can I ask you a couple quick questions?
Yeah.
How would you define the ego?
The ego is the unawakened one.
Mm.
The ego is the one that the veil has been put upon, and you're not aware that you are this divinity.
Mm.
And so you're operating in crisis mode, reactive mode, in order to make yourself feel safe.
Mm. Thank you. I had an experience in Ohio where people would like judge me for my spacesuit, and I remember realizing like people were looking at me with disgust because I didn't fit the image. And I remember thinking like the ego is like a veil, making it impossible to see the divine in all of us. We start judging with the spacesuits or people's belief systems or whatever. But I come to that realization as well. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How would you define the difference between spirituality and religion?
The goal is the same. The end goal is to experience God. That's the end goal. Because even if people are doing it to go to heaven, in the end, what they want to do is experience God. So the goal is the same. One is where people have been taught certain ways with certain religions based on certain teachings in the past that they have found have helped them. And a lot of Christians talk about the basis of love, to be a good person, to be loving, and all that. And that leads them to this sense of experiencing another part of God, another essence of God. And the same with all the other religions. They all have that same intention. Now, some religions, and there are many people who are following a religion who are very spiritual at the same time. They're very connected, and they know the greater teachings behind these teachings. They're not taking everything so literally and following dogma. So the different, and by the way, spirituality, you can listen to many people having dogma there too. Oh, you got to protect yourself. There's going to be bad things happening to you, and all this stuff, which I call garbage. It's not true. Anytime we create a human-made concept, a human-made rule, we've separated from the divine. It's that simple. So the best way to be is to just be the divine.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I come from the 12-step communities, and there's a lot of dogma. I mean, they're still stuck in 1939 with some of the stuff, because it's become gospel or the word of God for them. And there's a fear of growing and expanding and flowing with the divine mind, because more will be revealed. There should be a flowering of consciousness, not get stuck and frozen in that time period. So I appreciate that, because it could be damaging at times for people.
It can be. And people are also afraid of their world crumbling down.
And not trusting the divine, right? Like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
It was an honor. This conversation didn't go nowhere near as I thought it was going to go, so that was awesome.
I knew that would happen.
Yeah, I felt your heart too, and I felt, like I said, I could feel suffering. I'm pretty in tune to that still with people and still within myself, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to end it with a quote from Kuan Yin, and she says, "I delight in helping to liberate souls. I don't like suffering. However, suffering reminds me of the work I need to do to help people. Liberating individuals from their suffering is my primary motivation. Of course, the reasons of suffering are as personal and varied as one's voice and thoughts. Humankind needs to understand that suffering is just, and people accept it because of higher reasons, and that no one is a victim." Kuan Yin, she's a bodhisattva, so I really appreciate it.
Wow, that's powerful.
Well, thank you for coming on. And, I apologize in advance because I ordered your book, but it don't come until 10 o'clock tonight. But maybe I'll get you in the future on your book again when I read it. So thank you.
Yeah, I would love to be here again. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.